Welcome to a presentation from the Nevada Department of Education. The Nevada Digital Learning Collaborative is glad to bring you the Planning with Digital in Mind video series, which is designed to provide valuable insights for adopting blended personalized learning. This is the fifth of 5 episodes in the series. The Nevada Department of Education is committed to making the transition to digital learning smooth for all. The Department of Education places Nevada students at the center of every decision they make. They are truly committed to seeing that all students succeed. Today, on behalf of the Nevada Department of Education, Kim Loomis will be presenting Blended Classrooms, Lesson Planning. Welcome, I'm Kim Loomis. I've worked in the field of digital learning since 1999. I have over 20 years in the online and blended school setting, from teaching, designing digital content, professional development, and virtual school administration, to managing systems and processes for growing classrooms of the future. Let's get started. Before we jump into today's topic, let's define blended personalized learning. Sure, there's a formal definition with multiple parts, as defined by research conducted by the Christensen Institute, but let's keep it simple. Blended learning takes the best of online learning and matches it with the best of face-to-face instruction. Think about the best of online learning. It's always available. It can be accessed anywhere. You get immediate feedback. Students can pick up where they left off. The data is rich and thick on each and every student. Think about the best of face-to-face classroom instruction. In the classroom, it is easy to read students' faces and notice if a student is not feeling well or had a bad night. We love seeing smiles and building relationships with our students. We have the ability to organize small learning groups for peer-to-peer engagement and hands-on activities. Being a former high school mathematics teacher, I like to represent things in simple math terms. Blended personalized learning is taking the wisdom of classroom teachers plus the intelligence of technology to add up to a personalized learning space for each and every student. Note the 3 icons: a teacher, a computer, and a student. They are the foundation of blended personalized learning. Keep these 3 elements in mind as we move forward. Now, don't get me wrong when I say the intelligence of technology, because it's really not that smart. It's just a bunch of zeros and ones, making it very easy to check answers and adjust a learning path. But it's also not taking home papers to grade over the weekend. As for the teacher, your wisdom is so deep about instructional pedagogy, so much so that many of you have a master's degree. And we should never take the caring heart of the teacher for granted. As we kick off, it's important that we remember to focus on the core business of schools: relationships and learning. Even with the addition of digital content and technology as a tool for learning, we should never take the heart of the classroom teacher out of the learning process. Students' relationships with their teacher have an important positive and long-lasting implications for both academic and social development. Positive teacher-student relationships draw students into the process of learning and promote their desire to learn. As for the learning, maintaining high-quality academic instruction creates opportunities for thinking and analysis, using feedbacks effectively to guide students' thinking, and extends students' prior knowledge. When a student trusts that the teacher has their best interest at heart, they tend to be more engaged in the learning, behave better in class, and strive to obtain higher academic levels. Let us not forget peer-to-peer relations and opportunities for collaboration and communication among classmates. Picture a student who feels a strong personal connection to their classmates. They talk frequently using academic vocabulary and receive constructive feedback and praise from each other. That's the power of relationships and learning. When we think about learning, we need to look at its underpinning structure. The foundation of every classroom is CIA: curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Just like a traditional classroom, blended learning classrooms are driven by the same 3 CIA elements, yet with unique qualifiers: digital curriculum, guided instruction, Authentic assessment. Imagine data every time a student interacts with curriculum in an easy-to-read and digestible format. That is the strength of blended personalized learning, where the digital curriculum delivers content requiring less stand-and-deliver instructional methods, providing teachers with time to analyze student achievement results and guide classroom instruction in large and small groups, or working individually with students. And since there will be a traditional assessment in the digital curriculum as well as in the classroom instruction, in the blended classroom, filled with digital tools, students can stretch their thinking into authentic assessments, which require deep analysis, synthesis, creation, and peer-to-peer collaboration. The CIA of blended learning can be represented by a triple Venn diagram, where each circle represents one element. In this diagram, icons are used to provide a visual cue for each CIA element: a computer for digital curriculum, a teacher for guided instruction, and a student for authentic assessment, each representing 1/3 of the equation. To learn more about the CIA of blended learning, check out the Nevada Digital Collaborative video in this series titled A Balanced Approach, the CIA of Blended. The three icons, a computer, a teacher, and a student, in the CIA of blended learning remind us of the balance needed for a pedagogy shift to blended personalized learning. This is where the teacher partners with digital curriculum so that they can guide instruction with higher depths of knowledge, and students can take ownership in their learning while engaging in authentic assessment. Think in thirds, plan in thirds. 1/3 digital curriculum, partnering with digital content to deliver low-level basic instruction, which in turn frees the teacher up to provide more one-on-one and small group support. 1/3 guided instruction, utilizing the wisdom of teachers to ensure that the students grasp the appropriate depth of knowledge of the essential and power standards, moving beyond DOK level 1 and 2 into strategic thinking, which includes whole and small group instruction, as well as crafting thought-provoking peer-to-peer active engagement experiences. 1/3 authentic assessment and student ownership. Move beyond traditional quizzes and tests. Embrace peer-to-peer experiences within the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. This may also include performance tasks and projects. Today we'll explore blended learning lesson planning. Teachers must look for creative ways to release instruction to digital curriculum and to their students. Creating a student-centered blended learning environment will take a pedagogy shift, one that thinks in thirds: 1/3 digital, 1/3 teacher, and 1/3 student. So you may be asking, how do you plan for a blended personalized learning environment? It starts with understanding that if you, the teacher, will lead 1/3 of the time, that means 2/3 of the time you will release control to technology and/or your students. So we need to design instructional learning experiences that create quality habits in our students. Lesson planning begins with recognizing when to release the learning to your digital partner and your students. It's about designing learning opportunities that embrace a wide range of depth of knowledge. It is the teacher's responsibility to ensure that standards are being met at the appropriate levels. They need to look for opportunities within the standards to create a balanced and actively engaged blended classroom. When using the CIA components for designing instruction, teachers should look at all 3 components and focus on units of instructions rather than individual lessons. This will lay the groundwork for learning over time and ensure a 1/3 balance across the unit of study. It will be challenging to move from a single-focused teacher delivery system to one that releases instruction to digital content partners for delivery of low-level basic learning opportunities. The payoff is the data that is gained for each student, as well as the whole class, which will help guide instruction and open opportunities for authentic assessment. Utilizing the content standards, wise teachers will ensure that the appropriate depth of knowledge is attended to, as well as guided classroom instruction in large, small, and one-on-one settings. Teacher guidance should include scaffolding the learning to help overcome misconceptions. The artful teacher will look to create learning environments that stretch and extend the learning, looking for areas when students can take the lead in their own learning. Planning for lessons that release the learning to students may include small groups, playlists, or utilizing menus. But before we start thinking about individual lessons, let's make sure we see the big picture first. Just like the book author or screenwriter, they didn't start with individual chapters or scenes. They started with an outline of characters and who will do what, when, and where, before breaking their work of art into individual pieces, moving from the big picture to the smaller details. So should you when adopting blended personalized learning. So, where do you start, you may be asking? When using the CIA components for designing instruction, teachers should look at all three components and focus on units of instruction rather than individual lessons. This will lay the groundwork for learning over time and ensure a 1/3 balance across the unit of study. It will be challenging to move from single-focused teacher delivery system to one that releases instruction to digital content partners for delivery of low-level basic learning opportunities. The payoff is the data that is gained for each student as well as the whole class, which will help guide instruction and open opportunities for authentic assessment. First, tackle the digital curriculum. Lesson planning in the blended learning classroom begins with knowing what is inside the digital curriculum so that the classroom teacher may complement it. Teachers need to preview the digital curriculum and identify what students will be expected to know and be able to do. There are too many blended classrooms where the teacher had no idea what was in the digital curriculum. This would be like planning without cracking the textbook or reviewing the standards and flying blind. If teachers do not know what's inside the digital curriculum, how can they predict where students will need support and guide instruction? Teachers cannot wait until students interact with the digital curriculum and the data sends up a red flag. Teachers need to plan ahead. Start with identifying what's inside the digital partner and identifying tasks students will be asked to complete. Remember, digital partners will only provide low-level DOK level 1 and 2. Move to guided instruction. Once teachers knows what's inside the digital curriculum, they can plan for guided instruction. They will need to identify prerequisite knowledge and where students will need scaffolding or fill in gaps related to prior knowledge. These topics can be used as class openers to set everyone up for success. Teachers also need to identify where students might have misconceptions or areas that could be troublesome. These topics would be ideal for class closure activities to reinforce the learning. Digital courseware activities like discussions and pre-test material can be done offline in small and large group settings. Remember, it's a blended classroom. Blend the instruction too. Teachers will also need to identify additional resources that can be used to teach material, especially for students who need to see it in multiple representations and require extra practice. Resources can be used in one-on-one or small group settings for struggling students. From intervention to strategic thinking, guided instruction will span DOK levels 1 through 3. Wrap up with identifying authentic assessment opportunities. Teachers need to look for engaging activities that will stretch students' critical thinking and demonstrate mastery of concepts in creative and collaborative ways. They should identify opportunities for peer-to-peer active engagement activities, performance tasks, and projects to expand and extend the learning. Peer-to-peer activities may start in low-level skill sets and extend into higher-order projects that expand thinking across DOK levels 1 through 4. Once we have a big picture of the unit with ideas of where and when we can release to digital curriculum, it's time to design lessons that guides the classroom instruction. The academic content standards will help you identify places where you must lead, either in whole or small group instruction. Think about activities that can be designed to extend the learning, allowing you to release to your students as well. Use your wisdom to know when and where you can release the learning to technology and/or your students. With the big picture laid out before us, now we are ready to develop lesson plans with digital in mind. The iNACOL Blended Learning Teacher Competency Framework, based on the research of Beth Rabbit, provides a start for promising practices in blended learning. Central to its development was the belief that teachers are agents of learning and innovation. Emphasis was placed on the mindsets, qualities, and skills that support teachers' creative and continuous improvement and build upon a foundational of expert in-person teaching. The researcher found that most skills and approaches blended teachers need are the same as those connected to effective traditional instruction. The framework identifies 12 specific competencies, which are organized into 4 larger domains: mindsets, qualities, adaptive skills, and technical skills. Mindset competencies include the core values or beliefs that guide an individual's thinking, behaviors, and actions. These should be aligned with goals of educational innovational change. In blended learning, practitioners need to understand, adopt, and commit to a mindset that helps them shift towards new forms of teaching and learning. Quality competencies are personal characteristics and patterns of behavior that helps teachers make the transition to new ways of teaching and learning. These qualities like grit, flexibility, and transparency are developed over time. Adaptive skills are generalizable skills that apply across roles and subject areas. These skills, which include things like collaboration and problem solving, are complex. They help practitioners tackle new tasks or develop solutions to situations that require organizational learning and innovation. They are mastered through reflective practice. Technical skills are domain-specific know-how and expertise that teachers use to execute against the known tasks of their jobs, such as data practices and instructional strategies. They are acquired and mastered through training and repeated practice. When you look at the circular representation of blended teacher competencies, it is not a target where one would seek the bullseye. Rather, the competencies are 3 separate circles, unequal in size. The largest domain and first competency educators must embrace is mindset, followed by 3 identified qualities: grit, transparency, and collaboration, plus a smaller set of specific adaptive and technical skills. The larger and the first shift that must happen is a teacher's mindset to one that is oriented towards change and improvement. This includes uncertainty and ambiguity as part of the practice to improve teaching and learning environments. Change is difficult. Along the way, there will be bumps and needs for corrections as you customize your blended learning deployment. Flexibility is key. Teachers will also need to model and encourage their students to be independent and self-directed learners. This will be a time for teachers to renew their love and passion for the classroom, for student learning, and for their own personal growth. Once you get into deployment, grit and flexibility, found in the second largest circle, qualities, will become important. The ability to adapt and roll with the punches will carry staff far into an unknown and new learning environment. Peer communication and collaboration are essential to growing and reflecting when transitioning to the CIA of blended learning. When the digital curriculum partner delivers depth of knowledge levels 1 and 2, it is crucial that the data from the software is used to inform teacher-guided instruction in the blended classroom. Data analysis is the backbone of guided instruction in the blended classroom. Data practices can be found in the technical portion of the skills category. as it helps to manage the blended learning experience. Also found in the skills category is adaptive skills. These are some of the same qualities that all teachers have embraced, such as reflection, commitment to continuous improvement, and innovation. Teachers are also part of a larger community and need to communicate with students, fellow educators, and other stakeholders to support student learning. But again, the largest circle is casting a vision, shifting from a teacher-led instruction to a student-centered approach as we strive to create learning environments that are flexible and personalized. We'll need to examine our core values or beliefs that will guide our thinking, behaviors, and actions that should align with the CIA of blended learning. So let me ask you, what's your purpose, your why? Finding your purpose is important. Simon Sinek, author of the book titled Start With Your Why, says we need to know our why. Your why is a statement of purpose that describes why you do the work you do. It is your mission statement. It is your conviction. It is your core source of motivation. It is the reference points for all your decisions and actions. It defines who you are and what makes you productive. Sinek notes that everyone has a why. He believes that every person knows what it is that they do. Some of us know how we do it, but very few of us have ever taken time to think about why we do what we do. Sinek developed what he called the golden circle. The golden circle has 3 layers. Why is our core belief. It's the inner circle at the center of our being. How? This is how we fulfill that core belief. What is the what we do to fill that core belief? As you see, the core belief, or your why, is central. It drives your actions. Your why statement is a sentence that clearly expresses your unique contribution and impact. The impact reflects the difference you want to make in the world, and the contribution is the primary action that you will take towards making your impact. Knowing your why makes it easier to find fulfillment in your work and stay on track towards your goals. So get it down on paper. Sinek and his team shared a simple format to draft our why statement. 2, fill in an actionable, so that fill in how we want to affect others. The first blank represents your actions or contributions you make to the lives of others, and the second blank represents the effect or impact of your contribution. Let me share my why statement as an example. 2, help educators create active, engaging learning environments so that students are empowered to take ownership in their own learning. This is my elevator statement when others ask about my work. This is my calling, my purpose. Not what or even how I do it, but what fulfills and rewards me every day. As you embrace blended personalized learning, you too need to find your purpose, your why. Understanding the needed mindset, the core values or beliefs that guide your thinking, behaviors, and actions will keep you focused to align your new goals of instructional change towards continuous improvement. So develop your why statement. Your why statement should be simple and clear, actionable, focused on how you'll contribute to others, and expressed in an affirmative language that resonates with you. When seeking your purpose, your why statement, think about the actions you take and how you want to affect others. This should be your first step in adopting the blended teacher competencies. Then we can look at day-to-day how and what of blended adoption. While there are countless ways to structure a blended classroom, the Christensen Institute has identified several common organizational models. We'll focus on 3: station rotation, flipped, and flexed, or what I like to call catch and release. As implied by the name, the station rotation model has stations set up so that students rotate to different instructional settings. This model is not new and has long been used in elementary schools. However, in a blended version of a station rotation, for at least one of the stations, students are learning using technology that collects assessment data, which teachers can use to personalize small group instruction. Rotations can be on a set schedule or at teacher discretion. Typically, one station is a small group of students working with a classroom teacher, allowing for customized instruction to meet students' needs. When a teacher station is utilized, it can be challenging to respond to inquiries from students at other stations. Other common stations may include independent practice, group projects, or peer collaborations. Starting with just two non-teacher dependent stations, such as digital instruction and peer collaboration, is an excellent way to start and leaves the teachers open to monitor student actions and behaviors. Once comfortable and students have demonstrated self-regulation, a teacher-led small group can be added. The flex or catch and release model has a fluid movement between teacher-led and digital instruction delivery. Using the data from online activities, teachers can target instruction where all or some students need support through large group catch or via one-on-one or small group sessions. A class may start as a large group instruction, released to digital learning, pulled back for instruction, and released to digital again, followed with a large group closure. This catch and release between digital learning and teacher-guided instruction flows throughout the instructional day. Some days may be all catch or whole group instruction. Some days might even release learning to students with peer-to-peer active engagements or small groups. The catch may only target select students rather than the full class. The instructional practice is flexible in design. The flipped classroom reverses the traditional direct instruction at school, followed by homework, such that before students come to school, they receive direct instruction via online videos. Then, when they come to class, students can complete the homework and receive one-on-one or small group instruction. I have seen this work well with highly motivated academic students. Keeping digital content consumption at home to smaller chunks can pay off as well. For example, use short, enticing video clips to hook the students as lesson openers is a good use of flipped instruction. Finding a model or a combination of models that work for you will take practice along with much trial and error, followed by lots of reflection as noted within the qualities category, that middle circle of the iNACOL teacher blended competencies. But once you have your vision, your purpose, set as your focal point, taking risks and failing forward are just one step towards continuous improvement while fine-tuning your craft. The rotation model is a nice fit for the CIA of blended learning. It too sets on a 1/3 digital, 1/3 teacher, and 1/3 student balance. When partnering with digital content, the technology can carry some of the curriculum delivery. Using data from a digital curriculum partner, teachers can group students based on need and provide instruction targeted for specific aptitudes. Some students will need more teacher time than others. Thus, a non-timed rotation might fit best. Releasing students back to digital learning, independent study, or collaborative groups works well for a small group, teacher-led pull-out model. Let students take ownership of their learning within independent study or peer-to-peer engagement opportunities. For example, this may include real-world applications driving students to higher depths of knowledge or strategic thinking, along with learning that incorporates the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. This can also be a time for projects or interest-based learning, where students can dig deeper into areas of self-interest, either in groups or independently. These forms of authentic assessment go beyond the traditional assessments found in the digital curriculum or formative and observational assessments conducted by the teacher. As you can see, rotation provides teachers with a lesson approach that creates balance in the blended classroom. But don't go thinking that stations are only conducive for elementary classrooms. With a little shift in mindset, secondary classrooms in the short period schedule can also add station approach to their classrooms. When lesson planning for station models, keep the components of an effective lesson in place, such as a lesson opener to hook the students into the learning, as well as a lesson closer to summarize the learning. When lesson planning, teachers identify and design stations that will meet the instructional needs of students. After determining the targeted skills and placing students in small groups based on data, teachers will be able to design stations for students to practice skills independently, collaboratively, and in small groups. This will require the teacher to think through how to organize station, the flow and transition between stations, and what stations to develop to meet specific needs. Less is more when it comes to facilitating a station rotation, especially when this instructional model is new to you. Keep it simple, starting with just 2 non-teacher dependent stations, such as digital instruction and peer collaboration, is a good way to start with rotations and leaves the teacher open to monitor student actions and behavior. Once comfortable, and students have demonstrated self-regulation, a teacher-led small group or pull-out can be added. Before you do your first station rotation, walk students through the process, answer questions that come up, and explain the behavioral expectations. Also, tell students how they will transition from one station to the other. Keep in mind, every time you try something new, know that it may not go smoothly at first. You will likely make changes as you go. It is helpful to thank your students for trying something new and to give them the opportunity to provide you with feedback on how it is working for them and what suggestions they have. This creates buy-in and usually increases engagement. Trying something new in the classroom is daunting. We tend to teach the way that we were taught. Often this means whole group instruction. The release of learning to digital curriculum partners and to your students may feel overwhelming, like losing control. But turning over instruction in a rotation process is more engaging for our students, and students will build skills and fine-tune abilities that will help them over the course of their lives. With stations, you can take your vertical lessons and simply run them horizontally so that they all happen at the same time throughout the classroom. Here are a few steps in station lesson planning. 1. Choose the topic or skill you plan to teach and decide how many rotations you will include. Once you have identified a topic, think about the different ways students can engage in that topic. Here we can see 3 different possible stations: digital learning, individual work, and collaborative sharing. Of course, you can also use a teacher-led small group. Consider making signs for various stations. I have used plastic plexiglass frames for signage that are movable and can be placed on tables when engaging in station rotation. 2. Write a learning target for each station. Instructional time is precious. We never have enough of it. It is important that the learning activities that students are engaged in at each rotation are meaningful and connected to the learning target. It's also important that students are aware of the expected learning targets so they know they are accountable for the work at each station. 3. Design learning activities for each rotation and create task cards. Rather than explain the stations in a whole group setting, use task cards to detail the learning expectations. The station rotation model doesn't work well if students at other stations are getting out of their seats and interrupting you when leading a small group. To keep this from happening, create a task card for other stations that includes the learning target and details the specific directions for that activity. Now, stations can be timed, or they can offer students freedom of movement upon completion of assigned tasks. Truly, there is no right or wrong way to go about blended learning stations. Stations can run from start to finish during one class period or can span over several days. If you are noticing that your students aren't engaged, motivated, or lack taking ownership of their learning, it is time to reflect, fail forward, and try a new approach. Teaching via stations or learning centers feels very familiar to elementary school teachers. Offering them in secondary setting may not feel entirely comfortable at first glance. It is tough for students to focus on a single instruction modality for an entire class period, and the station rotation model allows for smaller units of focus. Stations, even just two, can break the daily lesson into smaller digestible chunks. While teachers may assign groups to follow a rotation pattern, students could also be allowed to choose their focus for the day and let them cycle through the stations at their own pace. This is an ideal time to use playlists. More on that later. Giving this simple choice alone flexes some critical thinking muscles, asking students to prioritize tasks. As noted earlier with stations, you can take your vertical lessons and simply run them horizontally so that they are all happening at the same time throughout the room. This will allow for stations to run the span of several days. Thus, one lesson plan can cover several days. Remember that every day, teachers should open and close the learning. The example here shows a 3-station rotation over several days. Each day, students engage in a different activity, such as a small group instruction, group projects, independent practice, or individual tutoring. The teacher could facilitate a one-on-one instruction or small group each day by pulling students aside during the stations. This flexibility allows teachers the freedom to spend short or long periods of time with students based on needs. Ideally, you want to provide students most at risk with your time as much as needed and early in the lesson, which will help them be successful in the independent setting. Then release them back to their station after quality teacher-led instruction. Pull high flyers aside as well to check for understanding, possibly later in the week. The time with them will be less than that spent with your at-risk students. Yet, the goal is that every student gets time with the teacher. All students need quality time with a caring heart of their teacher. Also consider mixing up the stations. Just as students cannot always focus on a single topic for a full class period, they cannot always engage in the same type of task. Support different learning styles with a mix of online, print, individual, group, and teacher-led stations. Ultimately, the key to successful stations is consistent expectations. Set up protocols, facilitate norm setting, and do community building prior to releasing students to stations. Begin by modeling the expectations with low-risk content, such as depth of knowledge DOK 1 and 2, low-level basic recall tasks, skills, and concepts, which is ideal for a digital partner to deliver. Teach students how to interact with print instructions. For example, instruction cards in stands on a table. Online instructions to open links, view videos, and complete written tasks. And with different transition options, like on a timer, done as an individual, or moving as a group. Having established norms are key to releasing the learning to students and expecting them to take ownership of their learning. When teachers have partnered with Digital Courseware, a software program that has a full scope and sequence of grade level curriculum, one might consider a flex model of blended learning. Being flexible in the blended classroom should balance digital curriculum with guided instruction and authentic assessment. This means a push and pull or catch and release among the three elements. When people think of flexible learning environments, they often only think about physical space. While it is true that the space is flexible in nature, there is much more to flexible learning environments than just the physical floor plan or furniture choices. Flexible learning environments also address other elements in the learning environment, such as how students are grouped during learning and how time might be used for more flexibility during the day. This example of a flex or catch and release lesson starts with whole class instruction and ends with a full class closure, two very critical components of an effective lesson. Between the opening and close is a dance between digital curriculum and the teacher catching the class for instruction, then releasing them back to digital. Much like the station model, teachers can still pull aside students for one-on-one and small group instruction as needed. This catch and release style could be used within the rotation model as well. For example, I was in a 4th grade class where the teacher had 5 different stations and actions, then realized a need to catch students. She called them all to the carpet, gave a quick teacher-led coaching session, then sent them back to their stations. As teachers grow their craft in the art of blended learning, they will become comfortable in releasing control to digital content and to their students. Still, they will recognize times when students need added instruction or coaching. This catch and release model is one format that can be implemented in any classroom setting. It's about finding the right blend. Finding the right balance among the 1/3 digital, 1/3 teacher, and 1/3 student is best done at the unit planning phase, not at the individual lesson level. Therefore, we start with planning by outlining the CIA of blended learning, digital curriculum with guided instruction and authentic assessment. Remember the icons, a computer, a teacher, and a student? Planning for a balance of all three is difficult at the individual lesson level every day. So the goal should be to find the right blend over time. Think about blending lesson plans and formats over the week, such that there is a mix of learning and styles. Again, every day, the teacher should always open and close the learning. The week or unit of learning could utilize a variety of modalities, from teacher-led instruction, small groups, peer-to-peer engagement activities and collaborations, along with a few days of release to digital learning, or even student projects or interest-based research. The key is to find the right fit. Move beyond low depth of knowledge levels provided by the digital curriculum. Stretch the learning into higher strategic and extended thinking. Ensure that students are meeting the appropriate depths of knowledge levels and mastering the academic content standards. The example here demonstrates how various learning modalities can help balance and blend the week from whole class instruction to assessment, with various blended lessons in the middle. So you may be asking, how do you write lesson plans for blended learning? First, start with the CIA of blended learning unit plan to ensure balance among the digital curriculum with guided instruction and authentic assessment, or the three icons, a computer, a teacher, and a student. Once you have determined when and where you can release to digital curriculum partners and/or your students, as well as where you must step in and lead, it's time to consider daily lesson planning. The Clark County School District's Office of Online and Blended Learning has created 2 templates teachers can use to develop blended learning lesson plans. See their site at blended.ccsd.net to access the templates. There is one for station rotation and one for flex or catch and release. Both forms are Google documents that you can copy and use to write daily lesson plans. Inherent to both lesson plan templates are an opener and closure. Teachers should always facilitate effective components of lesson delivery, whether the lesson is blended or not. Also embedded in each lesson plan is determining what data will be collected to monitor student learning and progress. When partnering with digital curriculum, it is essential to develop skills and data practices, as noted in the blended teacher competencies earlier. When lesson planning, look for ways to engage the students in the learning process. Education should not be done to students, but should be a venue for taking ownership and developing a love for lifelong learning. Let's take a moment to look at some strategies that put students in the driver's seat. One way for teachers to release control to students is by giving students flexibility in the paths they take through learning activities. Playlists and choice boards are common ways that teachers can allow students to choose their path through various learning activities related to a specific concept or skill. Both approaches provide students with a limited range of options focused on a specific learning outcome. The goal is to provide structures that offer students control over pace and choice with embedded collaboration and accountability. Often, teachers worry about control over pace. Let me assure you that teachers still need to set the parameters of learning. For example, a lesson might be expected to be completed by the end of the period or day, but student control over how much time they spend on each element on the playlist or menu. This type of control over pace allows the students to take ownership of their learning, managing the allotted time given for the completion of the lesson. Playlists and menus may allow for various modalities of instruction, from video to text delivery of content. This allows students to make a choice based on best fit as they become cognizant of their learning preferences. Working together in peer-to-peer settings and allowing for interest-based learning adds to these engagement activities. Playlists are vast and varied in their format, but their intent is universal: to personalize learning to effectively and efficiently meet students' needs. Playlists create asynchronous learning paths that allow students to access content, practice skills, and demonstrate learning while exercising control over path, pace, place, and time of learning. The most effective implementation of playlists happens when a variety of formative assessments are embedded to inform the learning process. Playlists can be created in digital tools such as TestTeach by BlendSpace and GoFormative, or you can use a basic online hyperdoc to create a playlist. Embedding assignments or formative assessments for each task helps keep students accountable. For example, if asking students to view a video or read an article, follow this with questions about content. Some common options for student progression through a playlist include: students complete all activities in the playlist in a specific order. Students complete all activities in a playlist, but may choose the order of completion. Students complete required activities and have other activities that they can do for additional review, practice, or enrichment. For example, must-do, may-do list. Students complete select activities in a list based on pre-assessment performance data. Students can choose the number and sequence of activities they complete until they reach mastery on an assessment. Choice or menu boards share the purpose with playlists of providing learning path options to students. Choice boards are often organized intentionally in rows and columns. For example, Tic-Tac-Do 3x3 grid would have a mix of instructional content spread around the outer layer. Students can choose any 3 to complete, yet all students must complete the center box with a higher order thinking task. Another example is a learning menu with several choices for appetizers, main dishes, and desserts, where students must select one from each category. To fully realize the potential of playlists and menus, the learner takes on a central role and will need guidance in how to take ownership. With freedom comes great responsibility. Learning playlists and menus are not a license to do whatever, whenever. Academic content standards should be used to create these active engagement lessons. With all the teacher work done in the pre-planning and creation stages of a playlist or menu, teachers will have the ability to guide and support learners during implementation. Playlists and menus provide a student-centered approach, which allows students to take ownership of their own learning. Please take time to develop your why statement. This should be your focal point in making a pedagogical shift towards blended learning mindset. Think back to the triple Venn diagram of the CIA of blended learning: digital curriculum, guided instruction, and authentic assessment. The three overlapping circles with the three icons: a computer, a teacher, and a student, which are the three key ingredients of blended personalized learning. Ideally, we are looking to reach the sweet spot in the middle. This is where the blended classroom has a balanced approach and a solid foundation in all three CIA components of blended. Let the digital curriculum do what it does best: deliver low-level knowledge at DOK levels 1 and 2. The strength of blended personalized learning is allowing digital curriculum to deliver some content, requiring less stand and deliver instructional methods, providing teachers with time to analyze student achievement results and guide classroom instruction in large and small groups, or working individually with students. Using standards and the wisdom of the teachers, classroom instruction should span all 4 levels of Webb's depth of knowledge. Use data to guide instruction and push the learning through DOK levels 1 through 3 into strategic real-world applications and thinking. It's the responsibility of the blended teacher to create learning environments that complements and extends the digital learning. Then teachers need to design engaging activities ranging in DOK levels 1 through 4 that will extend the learning and stretch students by demonstrating mastery of concepts in creative, critical thinking, and collaborative ways, requiring students to embrace and take responsibility for their own learning, thus developing mastery of concepts and skills. It's this relationship among the 3 elements that creates a balanced approach to the CIA of blended learning. Remember, it's a continuous movement among the 3 elements within the triple Venn diagram of digital curriculum, guided instruction, and authentic assessment as we look to the sweet spot in the middle. Craft your why statement. Allow it to guide your experimentation and mindset for new teaching and learning. Once you have outlined a unit in the CIA of blended triad, look for ideal lessons that will help you establish a balanced blended learning environment. Experiment with stations, flex or catch and release, playlists, and more. Create fun, engaging lessons that empower students to take ownership of their own learning. This wraps up today's episode of Planning with Digital in Mind, which was the last of 5 in the series. Look for the previous episodes to continue learning about how to embrace the CIA of blended learning as you adopt a balanced approach in your classroom. Thank you for your time. It has been a pleasure serving you. This presentation is available on the Nevada Department of Education's YouTube channel. Come back to it anytime, and please feel free to share it with fellow educators.